In the winter of 1942, a British escort ship vanished into a storm, leaving behind no wreckage and no final transmission. But decades later, newly discovered documents suggest the truth was far stranger than an enemy attack. This is the untold story of Captain Elias Arden and the final voyage of HMS Valkyrie. In the winter of 1942, the North Atlantic became a place where ships could simply vanish. Tonight, the ocean rose like a living wall, hammered by winds so fierce they distorted the air itself. Darkness pressed in from every side. In that endless blackness, even the smallest flicker of light felt unreal. A faint orange glow, trembling on the horizon, forced itself through sheets of rain. It was the last recorded sign of the escort ship, HMS Valkyrie. Moments later, the glow disappeared. No distress call, no bearing, no signal strong enough to track. The storm swallowed everything sound, light, and the history of those aboard. Nothing else was ever heard from the Valkyrie. That winter, the North Atlantic turned into something almost sentient. Waves rose like towers of black water, collapsing under their own weight with a thunder that shook the air. Even veteran sailors felt dread. Radio operators monitoring Allied traffic noticed something strange. The Valkyrie's weak but steady signal suddenly cut off. Not faded, cut, as if severed by an unseen blade moving through the storm. No ship loses contact that instantly, not in weather, not even in battle, but the storm kept roaring, erasing every clue. In that moment, the fate of the crew slipped quietly into uncertainty. Close to the water, the storm felt supernatural. Mist drifted across the waves like shifting curtains, opening and closing without warning. Visibility shrank to a few desperate meters. Navigation became a guess. Sailors called this part of the Atlantic the blind zone, a place where instruments faltered and direction vanished. The Valkyrie entered it shortly after nightfall, swallowed by fog, wind, and the unknown. This was the last point from which she was clearly tracked. Beyond this line, the world lost all grip on her location. From here on, the Valkyrie was sailing into silence. Mons Valkyrie was not a large ship, but she had earned her reputation. Her mission was vital: protect a convoy carrying food across deadly waters. She pushed into the storm like a solitary spearpoint. The ship groaned under each violent wave. Metal plates shuddered. Rails vibrated. But the crew held steady, knowing the convoy behind them depended on their survival. No one allowed fear to surface. What they could not know was that the storm was not their greatest threat. Something else, unseen, unheard, was moving through the darkness, and the Valkyrie was heading straight for it. Inside the cramped radio room, wind and rain sounded like constant shellfire. Telegraph operators strained to separate real signals from waves of static. The storm battered every antenna. Then it appeared, a rhythmic distortion, unnatural and unfamiliar. Not German, not Allied, not atmospheric. Something entirely outside the catalogue of known signals. Captain Elias Arden stepped in. He listened only a moment before his expression tightened. "This isn't weather," he said quietly. A chill moved through the room. Something else was out there. On the bridge, Arden stared into the storm with the focus of a man reading an enemy's intentions. Lightning split the sky, revealing the brutal shape of the sea, but the captain seemed to see beyond it. Years at sea had sharpened his instincts. He recognized patterns others overlooked. When the officer reported radar flicker, Arden didn't hesitate. "Maintain quiet running," he ordered. His calm voice carried an edge of certainty. He wasn't concerned about the weather anymore. His posture, his silence, they hinted at a different threat entirely. "The storm isn't our enemy tonight," he said. Before he ever wore a uniform, Elias Arden grew up far from the sea. His childhood was marked by poverty-cold rooms, scarce meals, and constant struggle. Hardship wasn't an event to him. It was a world he lived in. Yet adversity shaped him. It forged a quiet resolve and a belief that no one should be abandoned simply because life had been unfair. Neighbors remembered him as the boy who helped others, even when he had nothing. Those early years planted deep roots of responsibility. They taught him endurance, empathy, and duty, qualities that would define him as a captain, and qualities that would one day lead him toward his fate in the North Atlantic. As a young officer, Arden earned both admiration and frustration from superiors. He shielded his men with a fierceness that bordered on stubbornness. If punishment was needed, he demanded it fall on him first. This clashed with naval expectations. Reports noted he was overprotective and reluctant to sacrifice personnel, even when protocol called for it. To Arden, men were not expendable. They were lives entrusted to him. Though reprimanded more than once, he never changed. His loyalty became legendary. Beneath that unwavering sense of duty lay the promise he would later write over and over: "I will bring them home." During the Norway operations, Arden faced a decision that tested every part of his character. 11 sailors were stranded in freezing waters, barely holding on to wreckage. The storm was too violent for rescue boats to launch. Against all regulation, Arden tied a rope around his waist, climbed into a small lifeboat, and went alone. Wind tore at his face. Icy waves crashed into the hull. But he pressed forward, refusing to let the sea claim them. One by one he hauled the sailors aboard. Their voices were faint, their bodies half frozen, but all 11 survived. From that day on, his men said Arden did not lead from above. He led from the front. Before every voyage, Arden performed a ritual almost no one knew. He sat alone in his cabin, opened a worn logbook, and wrote every crew member's name, not as ranks or numbers, but as people he was responsible for. Beside the final name, he always added the same handwritten line: "I will bring them home." It wasn't meant for the Admiralty. It wasn't for record. It was a promise one he carried alone. To Arden, leadership was a vow, a quiet oath made in the hours before dawn. No matter the danger, he believed every man deserved the chance to return to the life he left behind. As the Valkyrie pressed deeper into the storm, the radar room suddenly came alive. A faint echo appeared on the screen, distant, irregular, and unlike any signature the crew had seen before. It wasn't a convoy ship, and it wasn't a known U-boat pattern. The operators tried adjusting the gain, hoping it was interference, but the blip sharpened instead of fading. A silent, unmarked presence moving through the storm. When they checked the manifest of expected contacts, nothing matched. The men didn't say it aloud, but all felt the same chill. Something was out there, keeping pace with them. Something not listed in Allied intelligence. And in that moment, the storm stopped feeling like the greatest danger on the ocean. Word of the radar contact reached the bridge quickly. Most crew believed it was a German decoy, a common tactic used to lure escorts away from their convoys. But Arden didn't share their confidence. He studied the radar plot with narrowed eyes. The movement was wrong, too smooth to be a submarine, too deliberate to be drifting debris. It felt intentional. Arden straightened and issued the order with calm authority. All hands to battle readiness. Whatever that is, it does not belong to any model we know. His certainty unsettled the crew. Fear spread quietly like smoke. Just past midnight, the contact accelerated. Before the operators could react, 3 torpedo traces appeared in the water. Thin white scars racing toward the Valkyrie. The alarm bell rang through every corridor. Arden seized the helm. Hard to starboard. The ship groaned violently as it turned, metal screaming under the strain. Moments later, the torpedoes sliced past the hull, missing by meters. Spray exploded across the deck as the crew realized how close death had come, but there was no time for relief. The attacker remained unseen. Only the torpedo trails proved it was real. The Valkyrie was now in a fight with a predator they could not identify. The next attack came without warning. A sudden shock ripped through the Valkyrie's starboard side, followed by a deafening roar. The ship lurched violently, throwing men off their feet as fire burst across the deck. Bulkheads shuddered under the impact. Smoke filled the corridors. For a moment no one knew whether the ship had been fatally struck. But amid the chaos, voices rose calling for damage control, injured crew, and missing men. The Valkyrie was bleeding, but still alive. Her hull groaned, flames clawed upward, and the storm hurled water over the rails. Yet her crew fought desperately to keep her afloat, unaware the night held even greater trials ahead. Inside the ship, flames pushed through shattered panels, turning narrow passageways into tunnels of heat and smoke. Crewmen scrambled to seal off burning compartments, coughing through the thick haze. Arden stood amid the blaze, illuminated by the fire's violent glow. His voice cut through the chaos. All non-combat crew below decks, seal the watertight doors. Move. There was no hesitation. They trusted him completely. Despite the fire, despite the storm, his presence steadied the men. Arden alone would hold the line above deck. To him, protecting the others mattered more than survival. It was the promise he had written, now carried out in fire. With the fires contained and the crew sheltered below, Arden made a decision as bold as it was dangerous. He ordered all ship lights extinguished, plunging the Valkyrie into near-total darkness. Only one beam remained, a single searchlight piercing the storm, directed toward the empty sea. Its narrow column cut through rain and smoke like a signal flare to whatever hunted them. Arden's intention was clear: to draw the unseen attacker toward himself and away from the helpless men below. Alone on the darkened deck, he became the ship's final shield. Hundreds of miles away, in the quiet order of naval headquarters, a telegraph operator caught a faint signal. Static bled through the line, but a human voice pushed through strained, fading. It was Captain Elias Arden. Double quotes, ... If we cannot return home, he said, then let others make it back in our place. The room fell completely silent as officers leaned closer to hear every word. Moments later, the transmission cut off. No coordinates. No follow-up signal. Just silence. a silence so complete that even seasoned admirals sensed the weight of what had just happened. When dawn finally broke over the North Atlantic, the storm had already moved on. What remained was an ocean stripped bare, no ships, no debris, only the cold breath of winter drifting across the waves. Search vessels combed the region, expecting to find wreckage or survivors, but the sea kept its secrets. No oil slick, no floating timber, no bodies. It was as if the Valkyrie had been erased from the surface of the earth. Some investigators believed the storm alone consumed her. Others argued that no natural force could make an entire warship vanish so cleanly. Theories grew, but evidence never came. The Valkyrie remained a ghost. Another theory emerged, one shaped by the brutality of the war itself. Perhaps the Valkyrie had fallen to a German torpedo, after all. Perhaps the attacker resurfaced to finish the kill, leaving no time for distress signals. But when Allied intelligence reviewed captured German logs after the war, they found nothing. No U-boat claimed a kill in that sector. No captain reported an engagement with an escort ship matching her description. If a German submarine destroyed the Valkyrie, history left no record of it. For investigators, the silence was unsettling. Enemies who score a victory boast about it. But this time the enemy had nothing to say. Whispers spread within naval circles about a final possibility, one far more troubling. Some believed Captain Arden enacted a classified measure known only as Protocol 7, a last resort order to prevent sensitive information from being captured. Under this protocol, a ship in extreme danger could be deliberately scuttled in deep waters. No survivors, no evidence, just silence to keep the enemy blind. But no official record confirms its existence. If Arden did invoke such an order, it meant he sacrificed everything to protect others. It would explain the lack of debris, the sudden radio end, the total disappearance. But without proof, Protocol 7 remained only a shadow, a theory as cold as the sea that claimed the Valkyrie. 15 years after the Valkyrie vanished, a plain, unmarked envelope appeared at the home of Elias Arden's family. No return address, no explanation, only a single sheet of paper folded with deliberate care. The message was short, written in a firm but unfamiliar hand. He kept his promise. Not one man died in the hands of the enemy. It was signed simply, "A soldier he once saved." The family showed the letter to the Admiralty. No one could identify the writer or confirm his claim, yet the tone carried a truth that official records never captured. A final echo from a ship long believed lost to the sea. In time, the Royal Navy sought to honor the men of the Valkyrie. A bronze memorial plaque was mounted on a marble wall, engraved with every name, including Captain Elias Arden, listed first among the lost. Under the names, a single line was inscribed: "Heroes do not need to be found or ever truly gone." It became a quiet testament to a ship that vanished without explanation, and to a captain whose devotion shaped every decision he made. Visitors often pause before Arden's name, not because of how he died, but because of how he lived, with a promise written in his logbook, and fulfilled in a way only the sea could witness.